Hey, what's going on, craft beer professionals? My name is Chris Klein with Cascade Floors Inc., and we are proud members and sponsors of the CBP. Some of you know me, but for those who don't, I look forward to meeting you someday. If you run a brewery or a food production facility, you know your floors take a serious beating every single day. Well, that's where we come in. Cascade Floors has been in business for over 55 years. We bring over 200 years of combined experience to your job site every day. We never outsource labor. Our crews are full-time trained professionals. We have over 4.5 million square feet installed at over 480 breweries in 34 states and 3 countries. Those floors take a serious beating every day. Our floors are designed to handle tough conditions and withstand chemicals and hot water washdowns and serious heavy equipment use. Our floors are 100% non-pro-rated 5-year warranty against debonding. If you're planning a new building, expanding, or just tired of patching those crappy floors, hit me up. We'd love to work with you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hospitality in Breweries. I'm Taylor Smith. I'm a solutions engineer with GoTab. We are a point of sale system for breweries and restaurants, etc. But we were born and founded in a brewery, so that's really a special focus for us. Here to talk about hospitality in brewing and why it's important, and really not to assume that these things aren't getting done, but as a reminder as to why they're important. Also, shout out to Cascade Floors for sponsoring. So I'll just go ahead and get right in. Just a little bit about me to kick this off. I worked in the brewing industry for about a decade, mostly on the food and beverage side, on the hospitality side, which is why I'm presenting this. And I have basically a career in hospitality and in building culture within a customer sequence to create really excellent experiences, and that's what I want to talk about here. So we've got 6 things to talk about, identified as critical points. And some version of this is where you're going to find like the best customer sequence or customer experience. And it's everything from the greeting to being knowledgeable and encouraging them to take 4-packs home, just really being engaged. So starting off, hospitality definitely drives sales. Every interaction we have with a customer is a hospitality point. It's a place to make a sale. It's a place to build a relationship. And being in the brewery business, we're really in the relationship business. We want people coming back. We want them, excited about the next thing coming out of the brew house. We want to be able to communicate those things with them. But before we can communicate those things, we have to really get them interested. And we do that with just really simple things. In hospitality, we have like the 10-second rule. When somebody walks through the door, some human being that works in the brewery should acknowledge them, whether it's an owner, a brewer, a bartender, a busser, a server, if you do food. Those kind of things, they're not necessarily noticeable, but they're really those little wins, those incremental wins. Engaging with somebody as quickly as possible. Even if you can't get to them, if you're helping a customer, it's still a good idea to stop, just wave to somebody, hi, we'll be right with you. Take a look at the beer board, answer any questions for you. Just starting from the get-go, it's that experience of wanting to come back. In this world, we're all good at making beer. Everybody's got great beer. So how do you separate yourself out from everyone else? Well, it's those little moments. It's that incremental experience of, oh, I felt really welcome when I walked in. Oh, they really knew about the beer. So we finally get to groups of people are coming in, and it's a really good idea. If there seems to be somebody that's kind of the group leader, they're asking questions or people are deferring to the guy who is the regular. It's important to recognize those little situations. So really, the warm, friendly greeting kind of boils down to awareness. Who is the customer? Who are the customers? Getting ahead of those logistics. If you're the kind of spot where you're going to go over to the table, and take an order, it's just answering those questions. Don't make them come to you. It's really just being engaged and being aware of what's happening. So an example, I'm at the bar, I'm helping a customer, we're doing some tasters or whatever it is, and a group of 4 people walks in. They don't really seem like they know what they're doing. Instead of focusing on this customer and making them stand there, this hospitality warm greeting starts with, hey guys, if you haven't been here before, grab a seat, I'll be right with you, or take a look at the menu, and I'll be free to answer questions in a moment. And just those little things, it adds up, it adds up, it adds up. When they finally get there, this is, again, just getting ahead of logistics here. We don't want to talk about outside food policies. We don't want to talk about checking IDs, first. That's not the first thing we want somebody's impression of us to be. What we want is, hi, everybody, welcome. Is this your first time in? That's a really, critical question. If you don't recognize a face, it's good to ask. And if they haven't been in, brief history of the brewery, brief history of the brew house, what kind of styles of beer do we focus on if we do have a specialty, and then start off with, what do you usually drink, and kind of lead into that and just really keep it conversational. The worst thing that can happen, especially when you walk into a new brewery, is you walk in and there's somebody standing there and they don't say hello, and then you walk and you're looking at the menu and they just leave you there, in that dead silence for a minute or two while you read through it, and you don't get that interaction. So, really just tying beer knowledge into the hospitality greeting, so we said hello, we've given them a warm welcome. They now feel like they're in a space where they're going to get good service, and now we can start talking about beer. And again, it's like putting the mechanics behind us and really looking forward into how we're going to, set up the next round, how we're going to get them interested in being part of this community and joining, become a regular customer. So then we talk about beer, and if you have a large menu, obviously you can't talk about every single thing you've got. But it's really just, it's about creating that interaction, creating that friendly space. Ask people's names, introduce yourself. I'm Taylor, I'll be helping you out today. First names are always, the best thing to do. And then start talking about beer, because you're going to end up, especially with a group of people, you'll end up talking to somebody who hates hops and might want a sour or a cider or, some other outside offering. You get that, the I don't like beer person, and it's just there with an IPA fanatic. Those people need to get the same greeting, the same experience. And that's really all, everything I'm going to talk about, it really all comes down to training at the end of the day. And this is a training moment of, even though they're not a beer fan, they're still welcome here if they're going to drink an outside, guest cider or a guest wine or whatever it is. But also, now moving into point two, like knowing the beer and making sure your staff knows the beer is a really important thing. Whether it's through a pre-shift or, the published beer Bible behind the bar, or however you get around it, just not to make this about GoTab, but we like build this into our platform where you can literally hold your finger on the button and learn about the beer, so communicating that to the staff so they feel empowered to then talk to the customer about it. That way, these two things will start tying together about queuing up that next round. So as I'm greeting a customer, I'm talking about all of our beer. Oh, you love IPAs? Great. Well, right now I've got a West Coast. I've got a hazy, we've got a new extra pale. So if you want something a little lighter, we can talk about that. And the knowledgeable part, it's not necessarily just what's on the menu in front of me. It's knowing what is related to that. So, you like the West Coast IPA? Great. Why don't you give this other, thing that we have that's similar a try? Oh, you like Dunkelweiss? Okay, great. Let's find something lagery that you might like. So we're not only just going through a mechanical, like, oh, you want to try the lager, here's a lager. You want to try the dunkel, here's a dunkel. You want to try an IPA, here's an IPA. It's more about engaging with them and getting ahead, again, like getting ahead of the logistics of offering somebody something that they didn't even think that they might want to try. And that's, and a lot of us have probably been into a brewery where they just kind of, run it through the garden and they give you a bunch of tasters and try to figure out what it is you want. This is more of actively engaging and telling the story together. So being knowledgeable about beer in general is a good idea. I'm not saying everybody has to be a Cicerone, but it's a good idea to just know styles of beer and to sort of connect the dots for a customer. So when you bring a taster, bring the two most similar things you have with the beer that they asked for. And that can really take that experience from tying point two into point three of, okay, I'm going to get this now, but I really loved the extra pale, so I'm going to try that on my next round. Or I love the double, I'm going to try that on my next round. And using hospitality as a sales tool, as a tactic to drive your sales, that's how we do it. We get them thinking about the next round before the first one is even done. And if any of you have or ever end up taking a demo with me, we will hear me say you will never make less money providing more hospitality to your customers. And this is where that comes up. If we're the type of operation where we're always behind the bar, we can still do this at that greeting point, at that taster moment. If we're the type of place where maybe we're going to tables or we do have servers, it's, again, tying back to that observational skill of, I see, there's 50% of lacing on that glass. It's time to talk about the next round. And we see that, maybe we recognize the beer, maybe they were our table or not. But as we engage with those people, even if it's not a customer we started, we can ask the questions. What are you drinking there? Oh, cool. You have the IPA. Have you tried the blank? And now we just continue that hospitality experience for the customer, and they're getting engaged with. They're not just being told to sit down and shut up and, drink their beer and then buy another one. It's really just being, proactive with that. So we're encouraging the next round, from the moment they walk in the door. Really, we're assuming that they're going to have a second round, and then we're, not necessarily pushing it on them, but we're nudging them in the direction of buying that next beer or getting excited to take it home with them. That's where that beer to go, extending the experience, starts to tie back into these things. So as you might be starting to realize, they're layering together to create this hospitality experience, and making sure we try and touch on that sort of traditional cycle of service, even in a brewery, even if it's not a white tablecloth kind of place, is, we're still able to do that. We're still able to give a really good hospitable experience. And that's everything from, the first 3 points we've been talking about: greeting, being knowledgeable, really encouraging them, to engage with the business. It's also having a welcoming space. I'm going to take a little side quest here and just kind of talk about that. You don't have to have plush carpet and, bespoke modern furniture, but, just a space that feels like it's a place where people want to hang out is definitely a good idea. Even if it's an ad hoc, industrial park brewery and you've found some church pews and some old busted tables, it can still feel like a welcoming space. And we can make it feel like a welcoming space, ourselves, by getting out from behind the bar, by talking to people, by being engaged, versus, standing and waiting for an order to come in. The places that are the most successful, whether you serve food or not, whether you are big or small, starting, been in the business for 10 years, the ones that are the most successful, they're always going to be the ones that engage with their customers at the highest level in a friendly, non-pretentious way. We all love beer. We're happy to talk about it. We're happy to teach, and that's kind of the attitude that we all need to adopt. And that turns into sales. It's all really about driving sales, and happy people spend more money. GoTab is kind of founded on that entire principle. So how do we encourage people to order more? Well, it's really about timing. As I mentioned, in my places, we would watch for lacing. If we could see 50% lacing on a glass, it was time to start talking about the next one. If you were a server, and places that I worked at did do full service, but if it was your table and you were a server, you should know what they ordered when you come back to the table. Oh, great. You love the house IPA. Would you like to try our new seasonal IPA? Would you like a taster? Even go as far as to bring them the taster, and still coming back to getting ahead of the customer's needs, anticipating the customer's needs, old standby in hospitality. It's really just anticipating the need and filling it before they even needed it or knew they needed it. And that will now, cue you up for bringing them back, making them feel like this is the place I want to go. I really love the IPA down the street, but at Taylor's Brewery, they're just so nice, and they're so knowledgeable, they're so friendly, and they move through the line quickly. And I just love being there. And that's really what's going to build that experience. All the great beer in the world, it's not going to get you there if people, feel like you're a jerk when you're behind the bar, or you don't want to actually be there. So moving now into, beer to go, it doesn't really seem like queuing up, a to-go beer would be a hospitality exchange. But again, these things all sort of layer together and stack. So this isn't even about at the end of when it's time to go, of like, hey, would you like something to go? That's not getting ahead of the problem. Getting ahead of the problem, or getting ahead of the order, is, oh, you like that? Oh, by the way, that's seasonal. You might want to grab a 4-pack on your way out, because we've only got, a dozen of them left. So tying back into product knowledge, tying back into the next round, I know that, I can spin up a crowler for you really quick, or I can spin up a crowler for you really quick, but we have 4-packs, take one home. If you really like that, by the way, we have a new one coming out in a couple of weeks. And that's, again, tying back to product knowledge. So, when we're interacting with the customer, it shouldn't feel robotic. It should feel like we're enthusiastic. And that's really what I always strive for, in the places that I was running, of, we love beer. We work here because we love beer. We love being in the industry. We're not just here to take orders and, punch a clock. So doing all those little things, even though you are using sales tactics, it's still, it's a welcoming thing of like, oh, grab a 4-pack. You should grab it on your way out. encouraging web sales, that might be a different talk thread for purposes of this seminar, but encouraging those web sales certainly would help, as part of the conversation. Hey, by the way, you can go online, order this through our website, pick it up on your way home from work or whatever, and doing little things like that, using beer to go as a talking point. If you can get them on site, you can get a beer in their hands most likely. And I also would encourage everybody, before I even move on to anything, consider having food in some form or fashion. I was highly successful in the brewing industry with full service restaurants. That doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but if it's a food truck, if it's a pop-up, if it's a snack machine, frozen pizzas, I've seen, as I've been with GoTab for the last 4.5 years, I'm meeting all different kinds of strategies on how to take that to the next level. And it's really not about necessarily even profiting from that. It's about, selling more beer that we profit from, but it's creating that experience where they don't want to leave. So if we can even, buy a turbo chef and get somebody to make us some pizzas, we have something people can eat. They don't have to leave. They feel like they can stay. They may not be coming for that. It's an amenity. But it will definitely boost those check averages, boost that spend rate, and boost the knowledge of oh, yeah, let's go get some drinks. Oh, I don't want to go there. They don't have food. All they have is bags of pretzels. That you can definitely lose sales on that notion of people want to, if they're going to stay, they're probably going to want to have something to eat. And that kind of ties into point 5, which is events. And events is everything from, the event of being greeted to an actual event, beer tastings, cornhole tournaments, whatever it is that you do. Your brewery probably has an identity. You probably have something that you're known for, that you're good at. A friend of mine runs a small tap room. He's known for 3 major things. One is they have about a half a dozen pinball machines, and they got on PinSeeker. I think it's called PinSeeker. So pinball enthusiasts that love beer are now coming in on Wednesday nights for pinball night. He does a trivia on Mondays, and that has its own crowd. I think trivia is kind of an old standby. We don't really need to talk about it. And then they have a really big, giant brew house that's way bigger than it needs to be, with a big loading dock. And they'll actually set up indoor cornhole tournaments inside the loading dock and do these round robins and these whole, daily events. And those have been driving people to come in, not because the events are the driver, but because around those events, they have created a culture for them that is welcoming and warm. So when it's trivia night or pinball night or whatever, the staff is trained. We know that when the pinball people come in, they have a certain type of beer that they gravitate towards. They like fizzy yellow beer, just for example. So when we talk to them, we know, oh, hey, we have a new beer for you guys, or we have a new lager, we have a new Kolsch or whatever. And it still just all comes back to anticipating the need. I mean, I think, we can reduce all of these fancy slides and talking points into just anticipating customer needs and being present in their minds, when they're making that decision on where they want to go. With the notion being that, providing hospitality is what people remember. Everybody knows that everybody has good beer, and can't say it enough. In an industry where we're all great and we all succeed together, providing that next layer of, a comfy chair and the game is on and the beer is good and somebody, saw that I needed another one and suggested that I buy one. That suggestive sale, it definitely works. That's why successful companies are doing it. At events, even the event of just being there should be treated like an event. Everybody should be welcome. Every day should be the most important day as far as a customer is concerned. And then, kind of bringing in outreach, advertising, social media. I wrapped it all up into one actual just unified point, because all of those things come together. You're never going to get somebody to follow you, on whatever the platform du jour is. It can be TikTok, and it can be Instagram, it can be Untapped, or whatever it is. We want people, talking about experiences. We want people, on Untapped, I'm talking about beer, but we don't want people checking in necessarily just taking a photo of a glass of beer. We want pictures of people. We want pictures of things happening. So if we're going to be having events, if we're going to be providing really great service, we can talk about that. So when we start tying advertising into hospitality, social media into hospitality, we can communicate that we are a warm, friendly, welcome place. Pictures of big, bright smiles of staff, pictures of groups of people. Focus more on that, on what the experience will be like than what the beer will be like. Everybody's seen that photo. Somebody holds up a glass of beer and takes a photo of it. that's going to be less effective than somebody saying, oh man, loved it here, came in for trivia on Monday night, staff was so knowledgeable, they were running a special for trivia players, whatever it is. When it comes to what people are going to remember, reviews help, word of mouth advertising helps, but for really capturing the long-term growth, people talking about their experience is going to go way farther than, oh, the beer is good, you should go try it. Because it's, two different conversations. What do you think about Taylor's Brewery? Oh, the beer's good. Yeah, go try it. No, check it out. It's a cool spot. Or like, oh man, you got to go there. Like, they're so cool. They've always got basketball on, or, whatever it is. Great beer. They know a lot about it. I wanted to know what the hop bill was. I instantly knew what, being able to talk about those things, like the experiences are what really pay off versus the product. So kind of just taking the last, few minutes that we have here. It's really just hospitality drives sales. And that is the crux of what I'm saying here. It doesn't even really matter if your beer is the best beer on the block. If there's two breweries, in walking distance, people are going to gravitate all the time to the place that's more comfortable. And the place that's more comfortable is a place that makes you feel like you belong there. The places that are saying, hey, there's no line, just come to the bar, come up, what can we do for you? Engaging with multiple customers at a time is even, something to work towards, but really it's just making them feel like they belong and that you care that they're there. And I know that sounds really simple. And again, the assumption of this talk is not that you're doing these things, but just as a reminder of how important they really are when it comes to how the customer perceives your business and how they're going to actually spend their money. There's definitely tips and tricks of doing that, regardless of whether you're using GoTab, which we include like the mobile ordering experience, we include those communication tools and the notices and all that really awesome stuff that can increase that engagement. At the end of the day, it's you that matters, and it's the way you use whatever systems that you have in place, whether you're relying on Untapped and human contact, or you have just the most simple cash register and only take cash. It's really just about providing, the least amount of friction for a customer. And friction is everything that we've talked about here. It's not getting a warm greeting that creates, you've had this feeling yourself when you walk into a place and you don't necessarily know where to go or what to do, and no one has said anything to you for minutes, and you're expected to just kind of stand in line until somebody can get to you. That's a friction point. Asking a question about a beer you've never heard of, what is a quad? And the bartender says, oh, you know what? I don't actually really know. Let me look it up. Like, that is a friction point. Not knowing what to get on the next round. Do I even want a next round? Not feeling like the bartender that I'm talking to even cares if I get a next round. That's a friction point. Being able to pay my bill, or waiting behind somebody who's trying to pay their bill can be a friction point. That's more GoTab specific about helping with that. But the point of it is, doing all these little things, and it relieves that friction, and relieving friction creates a more welcoming environment. It relieves, the stress of it. I know it's kind of weird to say stress when we're talking about drinking beer, but it just by removing that, they let their guard down. They're more friendly. They're more apt to spend. They'll buy a gift card. They'll buy a T-shirt. They'll buy that beer to go because they really feel like they deserve it. They want it. It was really good. I want to take it home. I want to have it with me. And then, by doing so, then you encourage that, social media check-in, like lots of fun things that tie back into hospitality of like, we welcome dogs, post pictures of your dogs here on, follow this link and go to Instagram, post a picture of your dog, or start the Dogs of Taylor's Brewery thing. Those are the experiential things that people remember, and getting people to come back, turning them into regulars. Again, the last point of this, long-term growth, becoming profitable, getting the profitability per customer, getting those check averages up. Just having great beer, it's not going to be enough, in this modern world. And we all know the state of the industry, and we all know that, we have to get creative to succeed. We've got to have the alternative beverages now and all of those things. That still all ties back into hospitality. Having the alternative beverage, knowing that the specialty drinker dictates where the party goes. By having the alternative beverage, you're creating a hospitality point. That's an interaction. That's an event, really, that we can take everybody there because Taylor actually can't drink beer, allergic to hops, doesn't like it, wants a seltzer, wants a kombucha, wants a coffee, whatever. That removes a friction point that creates better hospitality. And that's really, the nutshell of what I'm saying. Now, obviously, now we're at the bottom of the slide. This is where I turn it into the pitch about what we do. And we really help break down the walls, and remove that friction for the customer, whether it's that long distance communication of being able to send a coupon out, being able to send a notice out to a customer, getting them their bill so they don't have to stand in line to pay, letting them order through their phone for the places that are, interested in doing that sort of thing. Bigger spread out kind of outdoor venues. It really comes in handy. If I can order a beer and stand in line to pick up a beer, that's better than standing in line to order a beer. Because every time we're standing in line, every minute we're standing in line, we're actually not drinking and having fun. So where we really work in this space and is as a hospitality tool is removing the minutia of, browsing, navigating, passing information, waiting to pay, splitting checks, all that kind of stuff. Like removing those technical steps, those minutia steps from the hospitality sequence. Now we have more chance to talk about beer, sell beer, wash glasses, whatever it is. It can be like adding another bartender. Because when I think everybody knows when you have two bartenders, you really only have one. Somebody's always washing glasses, helping the customer, doing some tasks. So if we have two, we have one. If we have three, we have two. And adding some steps in there, folding in some technology can actually help increase customer engagement, whether it's long distance or whether it's on property. Even just getting people out of line that want to pay their bill, like just removing that third of customers from the equation. Now we're focused on the new customer. We're focused on the guy who just walked in, who looks a little lost, or the group of tourists that clearly, has never been in town before and they don't know where they're going. Like we can spend more time focusing on those people because the regulars are doing their own thing and they don't need that. They've already graduated to the point where they are already welcome. They already know everybody by name. And letting people, interact with your business at their comfort level, again, turns back into hospitality. There's definitely three kinds of people in the world. There's people that walk in, they want hands-on, maybe they pay cash. It doesn't really matter in this example. But they want to talk to a human being every time. They will stand at the bar, they will wait in line, they will taste every beer, every round. Those people exist. You've got those bearded be-flanneled guys that want to talk at anybody that'll listen about how much they know about beer. You've also got people that just want to hang out and read a book, and they'll open up a tab and, specifically like in the GoTab model, they'll open up a tab, they'll get the text message and they'll order and pay, from their table because they just want to hang out, and play a board game or whatever it is. So being able to let customers interact at their comfort level increases your hospitality engagement because I'm doing it as I please. And again, happy people spend more money. That's really the purpose of it all. It's using that welcoming, warm feeling that everybody loves to increase engagement. Increased engagement leads to better sales. So I don't see any questions in the chat yet, but if anybody watching does have a question, feel free, put it up in the chat now. You'll also see my contact information at the bottom here. It looks like it cut off my email address, but that's available. It'll be available in the post notes. And we're always happy to, connect with anybody, talk more about this. We'll be at CBC. We'll see you all there. We're probably going to be at your regional shows too. Just really love to show you what it is that we've got going on. And thank you all for coming. We're about 90 seconds short of time. So instead of filling that time with prattle, I will just say thank you all, and we can call it a day. I'm sure do hope to hear from you. Hope this was informative. Hope you want to know more. And just start thinking about easy ways you can engage with your customers at a higher level.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this session, we'd love to see you in real life. We host in-person workshops across the country for craft beer professionals just like you that are held in some of the most exciting beer destinations around. These immersive events are designed to help you grow and connect with others. You'll meet peers from across the country and leave with actionable strategies for success. Connection has never been more important, and you can learn more at cbpconnects.com. Cheers. See you there.